We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Saturday. We're into the weekend. It's been a busy week. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of emails, a lot of guests, everything you could possibly want in terms of the Rational Boomer podcast. So, one thing I like about the Rational Boomer podcast, you never know for sure what's going to happen. You never know if it's going to be a guest or a ton of emails or just the crazy news stories that are out there. And we've had a couple yesterday that we need to talk about. We have a few emails too. And before we get into today's emails, I just wanted to bring something up. I read a excruciatingly long email from a guy that calls himself Tommy Crybaby. I mean, it just went on and on and on and had all these big words and made up words and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of admonished the guy for doing it because I felt like I was being set up or being made sport of. I don't know. Anyway, he sent me another email, kind of apologizing for his verbosity, as he put it. And then he proceeded to write 11 more fucking paragraphs. So, Tommy, and everybody else, you'll be relieved to know I'm not reading that motherfucker. We've got better things to talk about than these big words that are either made up or just ridiculous. Yesterday I was kind of feeling bad. Am I picking on this guy? Is he just trying to be a nice guy? Well, he doesn't know when to stop, though. That's the weird thing. Here's the deal. We do a podcast every day. We talk about things that I think are important. Hopefully, you do too. And the emails are important to me when you have a point, a question, or a comment. And most people do that in fairly short order, which I appreciate. And you'll note that I do that with TikToks, and I try to do that with the podcast too. I try not to go deep in depth about everything. I'm going to give you the facts, some analyzing of those facts, so we all kind of know what's going on. That's one thing that annoys me about TikTok when they drag things out. I can't sit and watch that, or when the news channels repeats things over and over again and then drags things out. Just give me the fucking facts. Tell me what you think. Tell me what the facts are, and let me digest that and think about it. So, Tommy the Crybaby, you're not getting your email on today. I've often said I'll read everybody's email, but not in this case. And one of the reasons I'm not reading it is because of another email I got from Maria. Actually, I think this came off the website for the audio podcast. She said something here that I hadn't considered. She says, "Hey, Mike, I just listened to the RB1097 podcast, and I can't prove it, of course, but I think the email that addressed you as Baba Boomer was first part flattery to rope you in and the rest chat GPT. Just saying, keep on keeping on, brother." Marie, that's interesting. Is that possible? Yeah, I suppose it's possible. I don't know what the hell he thinks he's going to do with it. I mean, you have to have somebody far more famous than I to do something crazy with Chat GPT. That's the funny thing about the AI stuff that you hear where people are trying to pass off Joe Biden or whoever else. If I'm listening to it, I can tell you if it's AI or not. AI hasn't gotten good enough to the point where it's indistinguishable. But I don't know what he was doing, Maria, but he's clearly fucking with me, and I ain't having it. We aren't going to continue in that direction. Keep writing, Tommy, if you like, but I'm not going to read fucking 11 paragraphs of just flowery bullshit. All right. Now I got a response from another guy. His name is Dave. He writes pretty regularly. And the first paragraph that he wrote says, "Hey, Mike." And then about 1,000 times he writes amidst. That was a word that Tommy the Crybaby used a lot, amidst. I mean, he used it a ridiculous amount. I mean, if you're a writer, you try not to repeat the same words too often. He didn't even fucking try with this. He wrote amidst almost as many times as Dave wrote it here on his email. And he went on to say, P.S. I learned a new word. That's all. Good talk. P.P.S. Yes, I'm clearly a sarcastic prick. Well, join the club, Dave. Me too. And I get some shit for it, apparently. All right. We've got another email. This one coming to us from Boris. Now, Boris is talking about the candidacy of former baseball star Republican Steve Garvey, um, who he never really had much money of his own for a campaign in the state of many expensive media markets, of course, California. Schiff lent him a hand via the now familiar tactic of saturation ads attacking Garvey as a staunch conservative and trusty ally of Donald Trump. This love bombing was intended to consolidate a previously scattered Republican vote behind the former Dodgers and Padres star, and it worked like a charm. When the votes rolled in, Schiff comfortably ran first, and Garvey was easily outpacing Schiff's fellow Democrat and congressional colleague Katie Porter for the second general election spot. Another Schiff colleague, veteran progressive icon Barbara Lee, was badly outgunned financially and finished a distant fourth. And he sent an article along, which I will read. I have not as yet, but we've talked about this a little bit. Some people thinking that what Adam Schiff did was underhanded, a little shady, kind of propping up Steve Garvey's campaign because Schiff knew he would have a much easier time running against Steve Garvey than he would Katie Porter. So, yeah, we've seen that situation, and it does sound a little dirty, a little shady, but you have to understand that's what politics is all about. It's a dirty, fucking shady business. I like Adam Schiff. He did a good job in the January 6th committee. He's done a great job in the House, and he'll be a good senator, too. I only hope Katie Porter can find her way into a situation where she's back in power. Now, I had heard that once she started and decided to run for the Senate, she could not run for reelection for her House seat, which will be up in 2024, I believe. I think. Now, I don't know if that's true. If it is, then she's out for the next term, and then it's a matter of what she's going to do. Democrats should look at this, though, because we really can't afford to lose Katie Porter. Very sharp, very smart. She's got a sharp tongue, and we need somebody like that questioning the Republicans every chance she can get. All right, the next one says, Hi, Boomer. I've become more and more interested in the legal aspect of the various trials looming in the near future. The Florida Documents case came up again recently. I learned two things from the lawyers talking about it. First, to answer the question as to why Jack Smith hasn't gone to the 11th Circuit to get her recused from the case, is that she has to do something appealable. He has to be able to take a specific issue to the circuit and say, this is where she fucked up legally. So far, by her doing a whole lot of nothing and wording things very carefully, he's been unable to point to a specific fuck up. She will make a mistake. Her complete inexperience will eventually come into play and he will pounce. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. She has been very cautious, especially since Jack Smith had made the comment that, you better change your mind on this releasing the names of the witness thing, because that's clearly a fuck up and I'm going to the 11th Circuit. She stepped a lot easier since she did that, but she's not committing to things like this whole thing about Donald Trump wanting the case to be dismissed, and she didn't dismiss it. Some people think that she's turned her cheek on Donald Trump, and now she's going against Donald Trump because she's afraid of Jack Smith, and that's not the case. Basically, what she did is she kicked the can down the road. She says there's no reason to dismiss it for this now, but maybe it's something that comes up later in the case with the jury and all of that. So you see what she did. She said, "Yeah, there might be a problem here, but I can't do it right now." And then she's going to lay it at the feet of the jury or at some point while she's in the case. I'm sure she's thinking that once the case is started, they're going to have a hard time kicking her off the case. She's doing what Donald Trump does, trying to run the clock out and try to get in a position where she can't be held accountable. Jack Smith is a smart guy, though. He's not going to let this fly. At some point, he'll get her because, as was said earlier in the email, not a smart woman, and she's clearly biased toward Donald Trump. Now, the emailer goes on to say, second, one of the motions before her during the most recent hearing was a motion to dismiss the whole thing for a variety of really specious and stupid reasons, which is what Donald Trump's lawyers specialize in. She denied the motion, but she added without prejudice, which means the defendants can bring it up later. The upshot of this is if she dismissed the case at that point, you better believe Smith would be all over her with that brief to the circuit because that is appealable. However, isn't there always a however? If they bring it up during trial after a jury has been empaneled and she grants it, that's it. Case is over. It can't be appealed at that stage. The reason for that is that as soon as the jury is in the box, is the term I heard, double jeopardy attaches to the case. I don't understand all the nuances of the law, but I've heard or read these several places, and the prosecutors and former prosecutors do understand that. Well, I would hope so, and I would hope they're covering their asses for that. That does sound like a pretty frightening situation if she can wait till they're in court and then dismiss the case and nobody can do anything about it. Well, that's going to be a problem. And that may be very well what she thinks she's going to do. But trust me, if she's thinking about doing that, Jack Smith is thinking about it too. And he's going to cover his ass to make sure that doesn't happen. And ultimately, he'll put her in a situation where she'll have to make a dumb choice. And then he will get her recused. The laws that Cheeto Man is exploiting are far more complex than you and I fully understand. Not surprised by that. But the sort of people who would defend such a client do know just how far they can take it, especially with this judge. So for now, Smith and his team of legal eagles get to wait and watch and carefully read every word that she writes to find their opening, then swiftly spring into action, and everyone knows it. Grandma Patty. Well, Grandma, thank you very much. That was very insightful. That gave me information I didn't know, and I appreciate that. That's why I tell Old Soul and Eric and everybody else that's on the show. The great part of this show is as much as other folks are out there learning things that they maybe didn't know, I learn just as much. I really honestly do. I get information that I don't know, and I appreciate it immensely. It helps me form my analysis of what's going on. It's important to know all the facts, and once you do, you can get a better sense of what really is to come at this point. Now, we've been talking about the case in the Manhattan District, the election interference case with Judge Juan Marchan and Jack Smith. You remember the story from a day or so ago when Donald Trump's team went to Judge Juan Marchan and said, we really could stand a 90-day delay. And we knew that that wasn't going to happen under no uncertain terms. But then we were surprised to hear that DA Elvin Bragg of the Manhattan District said, well, yeah, definitely not 90 days, but we could use 30 days. And we thought, what the fuck are you doing? Let's get this thing going. But apparently, the DOJ turned over some evidence that they need to go through. And one of the reasons it came so late is because Donald Trump and his legal team were playing games. They got some information and then didn't turn it back. So it took a while for the prosecution to get it. So that created a delay. Now, as much as Donald Trump's team and the prosecution had some dates picked out in their minds, as I said yesterday, the final decision is that of Juan Marchan. The judge is the one that makes the decision as to when the trial will start. And Judge Juan Marchan is a pretty serious guy. He doesn't like the fucking games. And that's going to be hard for Donald Trump when he's sitting in the courtroom for 2.5 months during this trial. But here's what Juan Marchan did. Juan Marchan said, okay, I'll give you a 30-day delay or a postponement. Okay, well, that sucks. But the way he did it makes it interesting and makes it so much shorter. He said, I will give you a 30-day postponement, not from March 25th, the start of the trial, when the trial was supposed to start, but from today, meaning the 15th. So that means that the trial will start in 30 days, which is April 15th, but actually only less than 3 weeks after the original date for the trial. So he is extending it, but not as much as 30 days. It's more like 20 days. And so we'll see what happens with it. Like I said, Judge Juan Marchan isn't somebody to fuck around with. He knows what he's doing. He's no Aileen Cannon, and he's not going to deal with bullshit. That's why I'm excited about seeing Donald Trump in the courtroom. He's going to be forced to be there all day, every day until the court case is over. And this is going to be hard for Donald Trump. He can't fucking sit still and shut up at the same time, but he's going to need to in this situation. It's going to be entertaining to see if he can actually pull it off. Now, so Judge Juan Marchan has rescheduled this trial to start April 15th. And so that's helpful. It's really not that far. And if there are people out there that are upset about this, don't be. If you're most concerned with getting trials done and verdicts given by or before the election, this one will easily do it. So say this trial starts on April 15th and it goes 2.5 months. We're talking about the end of June, which is well in advance of the election. So it will work out just fine. And as I've told you before, we don't need all cases and all charges to be convicted. We only need a couple, 3 max, and it pretty much puts Donald Trump away. Well, we're going to easily get that in the Manhattan District case. There are 34 felony charges, and the idea that he would get a clean sweep there is ridiculous. The idea that he may only get 1 or 2 is unreasonable. Alvin Bragg has a conviction rate of 98%. So it's conceivable that Donald Trump will get convictions in the double digits. And that's going to be a lot for him to handle. Actually, he won't be able to handle it. So settle down. We'll worry about the classified documents case, the DC case, and the Georgia case after we get through the Manhattan District case, and we'll see what's left of Donald Trump. Now, of course, Trump's lawyers wanted a 90-day delay, which would have pushed the start of the trial into the early summer. Prosecutors said they were okay with a 30-day adjournment in an abundance of caution and to ensure the defendant has sufficient time to review new materials. Trump's lawyers say they have received tens of thousands of pages of evidence in the last 2 weeks from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan, which investigated the hush money case. The evidence includes records about former Trump lawyer turned prosecution witness Michael Cohen that are exculpatory and favorable to the defense. Trump's lawyers said prosecutors, most of the newly turned over materials is largely irrelevant to the subject matter of this case, though some records are pertinent. Now, the hush money case centers on allegations that Trump falsified his company records to hide the true nature of payments to Cohen, who paid porn actor Stormy Daniels $130,000 during the 2016 presidential campaign. A lot of people think this is all about bribing Stormy Daniels. It's really about election interference. He was trying to keep information or news out of the narrative prior to the election. He was moving around money and he wasn't being honest about it. All of these things are crimes and are felonies, and Donald Trump is going to have to answer for it. Trump pled not guilty last year to the 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, has denied having a sexual encounter with Daniels. His lawyers argue the payments to Cohen were legitimate legal expenses and were not part of any cover up. Well, that's hard to imagine if Michael Cohen says they weren't. And in fact, Michael Cohen went to jail for very similar crimes, all part of this situation. You see, Donnie's got some problems. Michael Cohen doesn't go to jail if there isn't some serious illegal things going on. And if Michael Cohen was involved and he's doing a cover up for Donald Trump, well, of course, Donald Trump is involved. Prosecutors contend Trump's lawyers caused the evidence problem by waiting until January 18th, a mere 9 weeks before the scheduled start of jury selection, to subpoena the U.S. Attorney's Office for the full case file. So you see what's going on there. They knew these files were there, but they delayed sending out a subpoena for them, knowing that when they got them at the last minute, the last possible time they could ask for more time. And that, of course, is what they've done. So they were responsible for the delay here, not the judge and not Jack Smith. Alvin Bragg's office said it requested the full file last year, but the U.S. Attorney's Office only turned over a subset of the records. Trump's lawyers received that material last June and had ample time to seek additional evidence from the federal probe. Now, short trial delays because of issues with evidence really aren't that unusual. That's pretty common. But any delay in a case involving Trump, of course, is significant, with trial dates and his other criminal cases up in the air. The defense also sought to delay the trial until the Supreme Court rules on Trump's presidential immunity claims, which his lawyers say could apply to some of the allegations and evidence in the hush money case. The Supreme Court is scheduled to hear oral argument for that April 25th. Now, Donald Trump continues to try to postpone this shit and delay the inevitable. That's what Donald Trump does. But it's only going to work so much these days. Judges know exactly the game he's playing, and they're getting tired of him trying to do it. Now, what I will tell you is that while the trial will not start on March 25th, it'll start on April 15th. But in spite of the fact that there will not be the start of the trial on March 25th, that very same day is the deadline for Donald Trump to post $460 million bond. And from all we can tell, he's kind of scrambling around trying to figure out how to do that. It's one thing to get the 91 million, and there were some games played with that. But this is a much different situation. I don't know if he'll be able to come up with the money. And if he doesn't, then they start seizing and liquidating his properties. And that is what Donald Trump truly wants to avoid, because it's an embarrassment. Donald Trump can't handle being embarrassed. He can't handle having the perception that he lost or is a loser. Now, we all know that. We all see that. But as long as Donald Trump can fool himself, he's okay. But when that moment comes where he can't stop it and where he can't stop people from hearing about it, this is when Donald Trump is going to truly lose his shit. This is going to be a problem for Donald Trump at that point. So we'll be waiting for that. We've got the money owed March 25th, we've got the Manhattan District trial starting on April 15th. And on April 25th, we have the arguments for the immunity claim. There is no way he's going to get immunity. I just don't know how quickly the Supreme Court will come back with an answer. But after that date on the 25th of April, then shit will start coming apart in terms of his defense strategies. See, his defense strategy is that I'm immune from everything. I can't be charged with anything, which is wholly ridiculous. And the Supreme Court will notice that and they'll say, no, you don't have immunity. And then Donald Trump's head will be fucking spinning. All right. The White House declared Friday that the impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden is finished. I didn't know they could do that, but the White House says, you're fucking done. Stop that shit. White House counsel Ed Siskel delivered the news in a letter to House Speaker Mike Johnson. Says as follows, I write to you today because it is clear the House Republican impeachment is over. The impeachment inquiry never had much credibility in the eyes of the White House, of course, and the president's underlinings have previously told Republicans to drop it because there's no evidence incriminating the president. Now, Friday's letter addressed to the House Republican leader going over the heads of the committee chairman actually running the inquiry pointed to the fact that not even Republicans think they've got a good case against Joe Biden. Just this week, it has been reported that the members of the House majority believe the inquiry is falling apart, citing comments from unnamed sources. Now, Tuesday on ABC News reports, one House Republican leadership aide told a news outlet the majority has uncovered nothing anywhere close to an impeachable offense. Siskel wrote, citing more reports from this week, a Republican congressman told Fox News the majority can't identify a particular crime. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, a leader of the inquiry, has increasingly talked about impeachment alternatives, such as passing new ethics laws for the presidential family and members, or asking the Justice Department to prosecute the president's son, which it is already doing. And the interesting thing about that, the House Republicans wanted Hunter Biden to come testify in public this coming week. But he can't do that because he's going on trial in Los Angeles. No doubt the Republicans will say, we offered him to come here in public like he wanted, but he refused to come. Well, he didn't refuse to come. He can't come because he's going to trial in Los Angeles. And I'll bet against anything that they know that, and they're going to try to message this in some bullshit way. Now, Mike Johnson's spokesperson, Raj Shah, said it's not surprising that the White House would prefer to close the ongoing House inquiry, in which has uncovered that the Biden family and their associates received over $20 million from foreign sources and that the President Biden has lied repeatedly. Like we said, there is no evidence. The witness was a joke. He was a Russian asset. If you have evidence, why have we not seen it as yet? There is no evidence. But of course, they got to keep spouting the lies because when you're in politics, you can lie and fucking get away with it. Now, the White House does not get to decide how impeachment gets resolved. That is for Congress to decide. Republicans formally certified their investigation of the president's family as an impeachment inquiry in December, but it was never clear they would achieve the number of the near unanimous support they need to actually impeach the president. Now, from the outset, Republicans based the corruption case against Joe Biden on debunked theories that as vice president, he twisted U.S. foreign policy to enrich his family by pushing out a Ukrainian prosecutor who was supposedly investigating Burisma, the Ukrainian gas company that hired Hunter Biden. Well, what in fact happened in that case, you had a corrupt prosecutor in Ukraine who was doing nothing, including not looking into Burisma. Joe Biden and a bunch of other leaders said, you got to get rid of this guy. He's a fucking joke. It had nothing to do with what the Republicans suggested. It had everything to do with the guy was a corrupt piece of shit and they wanted to get somebody good in there. Had they gotten somebody good, and had there been an issue with Hunter Biden and Burisma, then this new prosecutor would have looked into it. But of course, the Republicans have to make shit up. U.S. diplomats have repeatedly told Republicans in 2019 and 2020 that as Vice President Joe Biden merely carried out the policy they designed. Donald Trump's Treasury Department even sanctioned several members of a Russian linked foreign influence network for advancing disinformation narratives that the U.S. government officials have engaged in corrupt dealings in Ukraine. Republicans ignored all that and last year pointed to an FBI informant's unverified claim that Burisma's owner paid the Biden's bribes. Now, the sheet they had, I can't remember what the number is, but the sheet they had was basically a tip sheet. Somebody comes in, gives you some information, you check it out. If it checks out, then you proceed with the investigation. Well, when this sheet came in, they checked it out. Donald Trump's administration checked it out, and they found nothing, and they put it on the fucking shelf. It wasn't until Joe Biden became president that they went back into the depths and pulled this piece of shit out and tried to revive it. And as you've noted, to no avail. It hasn't done any good. They've had hearing after hearing. They brought Hunter Biden in. They brought in tons of people to interview, and they still have yet to find any, zero evidence. And that's exactly who the Republican Party is. A lot of bullshit and bluster and no substance. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Well, we know that Donald Trump demands loyalty. There's nothing more important to him from his toadies, his followers, if you will. Now, he's not big on giving loyalty. He never is loyal to anybody. He will burn any bridge, crash any fucking plane, and throw any friend in the dumpster if it's expeditious to him. But he's big on loyalty. Okay. Well, former Vice President Mike Pence, let's be honest, he stood no chance of being Donald Trump's 2024 vice presidential running mate. But he kind of sealed his fate on Friday during an interview with Fox News. Mike Pence told host Martha McCallum that he will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year, a decision he said should come as no surprise. Well, goddamn. A guy says a crowd of people to hang him in the Capitol one time, and then Mike Pence stabs him in the fucking back. Yeah. Well, Mike Pence should have gotten a spine maybe on January 7th of 2021 after they tried to kill him. But no, he spent most of that time kissing his ass. But now all of a sudden he's gotten brave. Yeah, I'm not going to endorse Donald Trump. It'll be interesting to see what Donald Trump says. He will presume that Mike Pence owes him, in spite of the fact that he sent a crowd of mouth breathing, red meat eating dipshits to try to kill him. And I'm not talking in hyperbole here. This is truly what they were trying to do. They were saying, we want to kill him. They brought a fucking gallows to the Capitol on January 6th. They were not happy with Mike Pence because they saw Mike Pence as the one chance where their Lord and Savior could stay in as President of the United States, and Mike Pence pussed out in their minds. Mike Pence only did the only thing he could do legally. This job of certifying the election is more ceremonial than anything, and he couldn't stop anything or change anything. This was a misconception of Donald Trump, and then he passed it along to the Trumplafucks and anybody else that would listen. And for whatever dumbass reason, they all bought that shit. And now they're all in trouble over it. The former vice president explained that Trump is pursuing and articulating an agenda that is at odds with the conservative agenda that we governed on during our 4 years, and added, "That's why I cannot, in good conscience, endorse Donald Trump in his campaign." It's interesting. Mike Pence says that Donald Trump is not looking at the same conservative agenda Mike Pence said that we governed on during our 4 years. Apparently, Mike is still proud of his work during the 4 years Donald Trump was president. But it's ironic he would suggest that it was conservative. It's hard to be conservative when you add $7 trillion to the debt. But apparently, Mike is a little delusional too, but not delusional enough to support Donald Trump. Although Pence had been a dutiful supporter of Trump, they fell out in 2021 after January 6th, of course. Pence didn't block the certification. Donald Trump told these dumb fucks, go kill him. And when somebody told him, they're talking about killing him. Donald Trump, all he could say is, well, maybe that's what he deserves. What a egregious motherfucker. Now, the fact that Trump seemed to support the chance of January 6 ralliers to hang Mike Pence probably didn't help things either. But again, we are sitting at March 15th of 2024. This all happened on January 6th, 2021. What took so fucking long? I'll tell you what took so long. You thought that Donald Trump might be helpful to you in your attempt to run for the presidency. You were afraid to piss off the Trumplafucks, thinking they'd either want to kill you again or just call you names or embarrass you or just not vote for you. You were trying to somehow wedge yourself in there to get some of Donald Trump's votes because you were thinking, and I'm talking about Mike Pence, you were thinking the same thing that Nikki Haley was thinking. Well, maybe he'll keel over, or maybe he'll go to jail and he'll be out of it, and then I can pick up the pieces. You know, that's what Mike Pence was thinking, and we know for a fact that's what Nikki Haley was thinking. But as of yet, Donald Trump is still in the running. Pence went on to say, I made it clear that there were profound differences between me and President Trump on a range of issues, and not just our difference on my constitutional duties that I exercised on January 6th, Pence said. Now, Pence tried running for the GOP presidential nomination last year, but of course, he quit the campaign in October after he said it became clear to me this is not my time. I'm going to tell you something, Mike. It's never going to be your time again to run for any office, let alone the presidency of the United States. I'll tell you something else you maybe don't know. It's going to be a long time before it's any Republican's time at this point. The Republicans, the conservatives, the independents, the MAGA, all these fucks have done some incredible damage to their party. Once this 2024 election in November is over, there's going to be a lot of rebuilding being done by the Republican Party, assuming they have any sense. If they're not smart, and a lot of things have indicated that they're not smart, they'll keep going and doubling down with MAGA. If they are smart, they'll realize this is a loser. We got to try something else. But if they decide to try something else, if they try to change their image, get different people in there, this all takes time. And it's not going to get fixed in 2 years or 4 years. It may take as many as 10. And that's why I'm saying the Republicans may be out of the mix for a lot longer than you can possibly imagine. Now, Pence's decision did earn him some respect from never-Trumper conservatives and others. But again, why did it take so long? Why did it take you 3 years to fucking get this done? They tried to kill you on January 6, 2021. You had to think about it for a while, and 3 years later, yeah, I can't agree with that. You are a sorry candidate for any office, and thank God you're out of the primary and not even in serious contention to become president of the United States. It's absolutely fucking ridiculous. All right. Bankrupt Rudy Giuliani's pot of gold may be his prized Palm Beach condo. Now, creditors say they want to sell the spot, but have so far been rebuffed by the former New York City mayor. How does that work? You get sued, you lose, you owe the money. Somebody should be able to seize and liquidate your properties. How is it? Why is it that somehow Rudy Giuliani can stop them from doing it? I wouldn't think there's any way he could stop it. Now, accordingly, the committee respectfully requests that this court compel Giuliani to take all necessary steps to sell the Florida condo and obtain phone homeowners insurance in order to preserve and protect estate resources and abide by his duty to maximize the value of the state for the benefit of his creditors. Now, it appears to be the same property that was placed under a $549,435.26 federal tax lien by the IRS. We don't know if this thing is paid off, but we know they got a $500,000 lien on it. So that's great. Giuliani filed for Chapter 11 protection soon after a Fulton County jury awarded $148 million to the mother and daughter, Georgia election workers Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, for the reputational and emotional harm they claim they endured when Giuliani publicly assassinated their character by making bogus accusations that they were fraudulently amassing votes to benefit Biden against Trump in the 2020 election. And I don't say that's allegedly. A court has found that he, in fact, did that. I don't think we have to say allegedly anymore. The creditors suggested that they're being stonewalled to add the Florida home to the collection offerings, which also includes a $25,000 Mercedes-Benz SL500, a signed Joe DiMaggio shirt, and a Reggie Jackson photo. Three New York Yankees World Series rings worth $30,000 and over $1.4 million in retirement accounts. Now, on several occasions, Giuliani has emphasized his limited assets available for distribution to creditors. According to the council, there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. On this purported limited pool of assets disclosed by Giuliani, the Florida condo is a key asset. Well, of course it would be. And the proceeds thereof will be available to satisfy the claims of his creditors. They accused Giuliani of making no effort to monetize this non-exempt property of his estate. Well, is that a surprise? You think Rudy Giuliani is trying to slow walk this any way he possibly can? Well, of course he is. But these are courts. Why aren't the courts going, fuck you, Rudy? We're just taking your shit. This is why I've always said that I'm really disappointed in our judicial system. It seems to lack the teeth that we all presumed it had. And maybe it's not just that they don't have teeth, it's just that they refuse to use those teeth when dealing with rich and famous and powerful people. Guarantee you, if it were you and I, they'd have us laying in the yard as they were dragging shit out. Talking about another guy that's got some issues and is certainly delusional. My Pillow CEO Mike Lindell. Can we even say that anymore? Is there even a My Pillow anymore? I suppose there is. So Mike Lindell has taken kind of a pivotal step to bring his 2020 election voting machine fraud case before the Supreme Court. That's right. Mike says he's got more evidence. Oh, just you wait. I've got some evidence. Mike Lindell has got to be the saddest sack I've ever seen. He constantly claims he has evidence And then when he's set up to provide that evidence, he always fails. He's a failure at the same level Donald Trump is a failure. And it's ironic he's put himself in this position when he got into this whole thing with Donald Trump. First 2 months, he should have been bright enough to see, oh, this is a loser. I'm getting the fuck out of this. But no, he didn't do that. And in fact, he's still talking the same shit. Now, when they docket it, I think this is from Mike Lindell. I think you're all going to be in agreement with me. The Supreme Court, they're the last line of defense, so to speak, and they view our elections as critical infrastructure, he said on Friday at X Space before gaming out at 9-0 shutout vote victory, according to Newsweek. Now, we know he's a big ally of Donald Trump, which is his greatest mistake in his life, second only to becoming a meth addict or a crack addict. Now, he's been yelling about allegations that there was rampant fraud committed during the 2020 presidential election. We've been hearing this for 3 years. Never once has any evidence been provided, especially not by Mike Lindell. But he's talking as if he finally found some. Well, we've heard this story before. We've waited with bated breath to see his evidence, and we have yet to see any. I'd be foolish, we'd all be foolish to think that he actually has something, especially since we know for a fact through every other authority that there was no fraud in the 2020 election. Now, Lindell has professed that the country should make paper balloting the law of the land while disparaging the voting machines outfitted by companies like Dominion Voting Systems, Smartmatic. He's already facing defamation lawsuits by both the companies. I don't know when those cases are going to trial, but he's going to be absolutely crushed. If they beat Fox News to the tune of $850 million, and of course, Smartmatic is next up with Fox News, and it's going to be at least that or a lot more, because Smartmatic is suing them for $2.4 million, and they've said that they don't want to settle outside of court. Will that be enough to crush Fox? I don't know, but whatever they're going to get out of Mike Lindell will crush him. I think he's already crushed. Now, Lindell said that his attorneys are pressing for the high court to consider hearing his challenges before the November 5th election, when Trump, the presumptive GOP nominee, will likely battle Biden in a sequel. And that's hopeful thinking. Again, I don't know that he's going to make it to the nomination. Donald Trump's in a lot of trouble in so many ways, and it's not wearing on him very well. You can see it in his face, you can hear it in his voice, and it's going to get nothing but worse between now and November. Now, the day before the betting exec appeared on Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, classic show, he said, tell them about the Supreme Court, then say, here's a set of sheets for your sleep, he said. The thing is, he probably wasn't kidding about that. He was probably serious. He said he hopes his case will be heard really fast and that he expects his complaint will be made available for the public to read in the coming days. We're going to prove they stole it, and we're going to set things right. Yeah, Mikey, we heard about this all before, and it hasn't gone well for you. Your entire company is pretty much done for. You were liquidating machinery from your company. Your sales are in the shitter. Big retailers, online and otherwise, have walked away from you because they don't want to be tied to a fucking goofball, which is what Mike Lindell is. So we'll see if Mike actually comes up with evidence. It's hard to believe that he will, given that we know there was no fraud in the 2020 election. But Mike Lindell keeps hope alive for dumb fucks. All right. A conversation on MSNBC included political experts who agreed that no one is coming to save the U.S. from Donald Trump. Only the voters can. And I think there's something to be said about that. We've been discussing the problems with the courts and the delays and all this sort of stuff. You know, Donald Trump will talk about our judicial system as being two-tier, and he's absolutely right about that. But he's wrong that it's Democrats over Republicans. It's really about wealthy, powerful, famous people over us. Because we watch the things that are happening to Donald Trump, and we know as well as anybody that if we did those same things, we'd be in jail. But somehow Donald Trump keeps getting abilities or situations where he can delay things. And that is troubling, and that is disappointing and disconcerting. As I've said before, once we get power in the House and the Senate, we need to address the judicial system from the Supreme Court on down. You can't have people like Aileen Cannon or some of these other fucks, even like McAfee in Georgia. These people aren't playing it straight. They aren't dealing with strictly law. They're dealing with other issues. Aileen Cannon wants to kiss Donald Trump's ass. Judge McAfee is trying to win an election coming up in 24. So he's got to ride the fence as opposed to being a fair and honest judge. That is troubling. Now, former lead investigator for the House Select Committee, Tim Heaphy, explained that the more time passes, the harder it will be for prosecutors to convict Trump because memories fade and public interest does too. Nicole Wallace, the host on the show, complained that Trump's strategy has been a successful one because he is leading in national polls and he has managed to delay his trials. Heaphy lamented that the cases would have happened much sooner if the Justice Department had been smarter about the ordeal and had begun its own investigation more timely. And that's something we've talked about too. Merrick Garland waited 2 years, almost 2 years, before he hired Jack Smith to actually do something. Had Merrick Garland got his thumb out of his ass on the day one after he took office, started the investigation, we'd already be done with these federal cases. That needs to be addressed after the election, too. He's not a good attorney general. And it's not that I don't think he is smart. Merrick Garland is smart. He's a legal genius. But he doesn't have the temperament and he doesn't have the balls to be an attorney general. He's too afraid of public opinion and television and the news and Republican politicians. And we need an attorney general that's not afraid of that shit. It's about rule of law. And if you break the law, I don't give a fuck who you are. We're going to get you and we're going to get you fast. And unfortunately, Merrick Garland doesn't think that way. And that is a huge problem. Now, Heaphy went on to say, I mean, you just put your finger on the entire enchilada. Actually, Wallace said that. The reluctance to examine crimes. Maybe it was so disorienting to catch crimes committed before our very eyes and to watch the criminal carry out those crimes on TV and then to watch him tweet at the criminals. We love you. That made it people stop. She said that she was trying to explain what she's trying to explain is that there needs to be an honest conversation for the next 8 months about Trump, and she fears he will escape consequences for his actions. He will not escape consequences. He will be tried, he will be convicted, and he will be held responsible. It's these people that are worried about whether it's going to be before the election or not. Georgia could be, depending on when they set the timeline for the trial, given that the whole disqualification with Fani Willis is over. We know that the Manhattan District is going to happen in April 15th and probably be done by the end of June. As I've said, we don't have to have all 91 felony charges. We don't need 91 convictions. We only need a couple. And those couple should come at some point before June. in the Manhattan District trial and see how that changes everything. The perception of Donald Trump, Donald Trump's own mental state, it will change everything. Now, the quote goes on to say there will most likely be zero legal accountability for Donald Trump, and he's banking on that being a winning political strategy, Wallace continued. Now, the only people who have any agencies in this conversation at this point are the voters. And what Fani Willis went through, she's been doxxed. Her kids have been doxxed. Her ex-husband has been doxxed. And her personal information is, there is no glory in actually trying to hold Trump accountable. And there's some truth to that. But it's because he gets away with it. I wouldn't get away with it. You wouldn't get away with it. But somehow Donald Trump does. For whatever reason, he has bullied his way through the court system, and we have judges that are willing to back down from it. Those aren't the judges we need in office. That isn't the attorney general we need in office. We need people that understand law is law, regardless of who you are, and you go after people the same way you would go after anybody else. Still, she said, all they have tried to do is treat him the way any other American would be treated, and it hasn't worked because they haven't treated him like any other American. I don't think it is healthy anymore as a host of this program, and I'll speak humbly for my own hours to talk about legal accountabilities on the table. It probably isn't, Wallace complained. And what will people who spent their lives and careers as prosecutors, what will say to someone like Donald Trump, who won and did it and got out of accountability and got his out of jail free card, and he didn't even need a pocket pardon to do it? Now, this is where I have the problem with the media. She's talking like he's never going to be held accountable. He'll get out of 91 felony charges and he'll be elected president and he'll just do away with it all. That is a ridiculous comment. There is no path for Donald Trump to win the presidency. You know what? I'm sitting here thinking about this, and I think it's going to be a landslide for Joe Biden over Donald Trump if Donald Trump is even the nominee. And people are going to say, "Oh, you're a psychic. You somehow knew it. You somehow don't give me that credit. I'm looking at the logic and the facts and the truth about what's going on now. And if that's all you do, you don't listen to all the emotionality of the media and the politicians and everybody else. If you don't listen to that shit and you look at the facts, you will see exactly what I see. There is no way. No way Donald Trump wins. She makes a good point, though, that if you really want this done and you want Donald Trump accountable, the bottom line is on us. It's about us getting out to vote and wiping him off the map. And I think we will do that. I think people are scared enough about the prospect of Donald Trump becoming president. And I think people will get out en masse, much like they did in 2020 and in 2022. If you think people got out to vote in 2020 because they're scared, it's even worse now. Because in 2024, we have the whole issue with the Roe v. Wade thing. If you're not a woman, you maybe don't understand it, but I know women, and they are pissed about that. And they make up half of this country. And there are men like me and many of you out there that support the women in their concerns about this overturning Roe v. Wade. There's about 75% of this country that support Roe v. Wade. How in the world do you win an election if you've embraced that and said you were responsible for doing it? Based on those things, there's no way he can win. And when I hear the media talking about, oh no, what if he wins? Oh no, he won't be accountable. That's just more of what I've said they've always done. Scare people to get them to watch, to get them to vote, whatever it is. That's what they're doing. And I get tired of that. Now, she finished the segment by saying that one of many things that could matter is if some of the most credible observers from the former Trump administration will step forward. Retired General Mark Milley, retired General James Mattis have been willing to attack Trump for what they observed, but they haven't hit the campaign trail to talk to voters and answer questions. I constantly plead with the national security officials who saw up close and personal his lack of fitness. I plead for the generals. Mattis quit for cause. Milley put himself on the line. Your investigation revealed this quite clearly. I want them to get out there and tell the American people what they think. You see something, you say something. It became the duty of the American people after 9/11. If you believe that January 6th was another attack on our democracy, you have a duty, not just if you're a general, but if you're a prosecutor. She said she hoped there would be some soul searching among some of the federal prosecutors who could step up and act. It is as much of their duty as anything they've asked to do. Well, she's absolutely right. We need these people to come out. But you have to understand, in many of these court cases, most of the witnesses are, in fact, Republicans. Most of them are people that worked directly with Donald Trump. So these people will step out and speak their minds and tell the truth in court. The fact that we don't know what they're going to say isn't surprising because it's a fucking trial. I've told you before, we are going to hear things over the next 6, 7 months that we never heard before. Things that are far more egregious than what we already know. And that is fucking hard to imagine. We're going to find out things. The world is going to find out things. This country is going to find out things. And Donald Trump will be accountable and he will not be elected to the presidency. I can't wait till we get to November. And part of me, while I don't think he'll make it, I kind of hope he does make it as the nominee, Donald Trump, because that makes it even that much easier for Joe Biden. Any election after 2016 through 2024 that has Donald Trump's face attached to it has been a loser. People he's endorsed, running for the presidency himself, everything has lost. And every day it gets worse for him. His image is stained even further. Evidence is released that prove he's a criminal and a corrupt piece of shit. And over and above that, we've got the pressure that's hanging over his head. Donald Trump is slipping. You can see it when you hear him talk. You can see it in his face. You can see it in his body. He's not a healthy guy. He may not make it to the nomination, but Lord help him if he does. Because if he doesn't like to be embarrassed, this is going to be an incredibly embarrassing election for Donald Trump, without question. I would be willing to bet with anybody, any of these media people that say, oh, he could win. Well, then please tell me how he would do that. Give me the data points that suggest that. There are none. All of them are negative for Donald Trump. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for spending the time with me. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.